This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Show. Today I'm joined by Rachel Lucas, who is a teacher based in Jacksonville, Florida, in the US. Rachel also runs the Tech for World Language Teachers website and YouTube channel, and so we'll be talking mainly about language teaching and learning and technology.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Twilight Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. As I mentioned in the introduction on to today's show, I'll be talking to Rachel Lucas, who is a passionate Spanish instructor and EdTech mentor with a remarkable 19-year career dedicated to the field. Rachel's enthusiasm lies in supporting busy world language educators, helping them engage their students effectively while improving their language proficiency and skills. She's the founder also of the Tech for World Language Teachers blog and a flourishing online community on Facebook, where she fosters a collaborative environment. Rachel is also a visionary founder of the World Language Teacher Tech Academy, an online platform designed for the professional development of global language educators. Now, I'll be talking to Rachel about all of this and more after the Teachers Talk Radio news.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centered French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
With exam results looming for students from all four home nations and around the world, Schools Week features an article concentrating on the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The article, written by a head teacher, says we need to continue to consider the additional burden of the pandemic. It reminds us that this year's Year 13s were part of a cohort who didn't sit GCSE exams, and that this year's Year 11s were in Year 8 when lockdowns began, although the start of GCSE was supposed to be a return to normal for these students. Teachers too faced the challenge of a return to normal content, having had it reduced over the last 2 years. ECTs also needed some increased support in delivering the broader content for a number of GCSEs. Workload for pupils and teachers shifted and perhaps increased as schools tried to find the right balance of support, revision and basic content coverage by often offering after-school and holiday intervention sessions. Whatever happens for individuals on results days this year, the ghost of the pandemic, he says, has not disappeared just yet. The Guardian reports on new local government association research which suggests council-maintained schools in England outperform academies in Ofsted ratings. The research found 93% of council-maintained schools were ranked good or outstanding by Ofsted as of the 31st of January 2023. This compared with 87% of academies that have been graded since they converted. The study also found only 57% of academies that were already an academy in August 2018 managed to improve standards from inadequate or requires improvement to good or outstanding, compared with 73% of council-maintained schools. The research has prompted many to question the evidence for a move away from council-maintained schools. Currently, 80% of secondary schools and 40% of primaries are academies. Councils were last able to open maintained schools in 2012. A Department for Education spokesperson said academy reforms have played a major role in increasing the proportion of good or outstanding schools. Mary Bousted of the National Education Union said allowing local authorities to open new maintained schools would boost the ability to respond to demographic changes by opening quality provision. Whilst the research has been seen by many as a warning about the risks of government policy on academisation, some have pointed out that because schools who are failing are required to convert to academies, the numbers are always going to be skewed. A report by the Children's Commissioner shows that eating disorders such as bulimia, anorexia and binge eating are on the rise in England. Figures suggest that in the UK an estimated 1.25 million have an eating disorder, but that young people under the age of 25 are disproportionately affected. The report points to NHS figures which it says show a large and recent increase in the numbers of hospital admissions for young people due to eating disorders, with almost half being for those under 25. Whilst the large majority of those affected are female, admissions of young men have more than doubled in the period from 2015-16 to 2020-21. However, according to the report, whilst the number of children and young people starting treatment has more than doubled, so have waiting times for the beginning of treatment. Urgent cases now take more than 12 weeks to begin. The report suggests that government need to tackle some of the drivers of disordered eating, including online content and forms of social media. In the USA, the Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona, says the Supreme Court decision to eliminate affirmative action may help to axe legacy and donor-based college admissions. The Guardian covers the story which focuses on the college admissions process across America. The wealthiest Americans, who are overwhelmingly white, benefit disproportionately from college admissions based on familial relations with alumni and school donors. Cardona praised colleges who have already stopped legacy admissions, including Wesleyan University, Johns Hopkins, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He said these and other schools were making sure they're doing more for diversity than they were doing before the end of affirmative action. He did, however, make his criticism of the decision by the Supreme Court clear, when he said that there are brown and black kids who are going to feel like they're not wanted. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
So welcome back, everyone, and welcome in particular to my special guest, Rachel Lucas. How are you today, Rachel?
I'm good, thank you.
What have you been up to? I'm well, thank you.
Good. Just got up, hung out with my hubby, and we went to a pop-up market, and now I'm spending some time with you.
Fantastic. What is a pop-up market for those of our listeners who have no idea what you're talking about? I think I can guess, but what is it exactly?
So in the community that I live in, they decided to organize like vendors come, kind of like an arts market or event, like, arts and crafts and things like that. And they decided to, rather than you go to it, they come bring it to you. And there's like food and jewelry, books, candles, bread, pastries. Yeah, almost about a dress, but yeah.
That's great. It sounds fun. like quite a nice community event as well.
Yeah. And you get to mingle and meet your neighbors. So it's nice.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And so, Rachel, I usually start by asking my guests to talk about how they became involved in education, how they became teachers. What was it with you? What attracted you to education? How did you become a teacher?
I actually was wrapping up college, and then somebody said how great it was, and so right as I was finishing college, I was like, I think I'm gonna go be a teacher. So I had to I finished college and I had to I got a job as a teacher, and I was supposed to be an graphic arts teacher, and because I spoke Spanish, they wanted me to do both, do graphic arts and Spanish, but the high school that hired me had such a need for Spanish that other thing didn't materialize. So I became a Spanish teacher. And I did that for 8 years. And then I transitioned to an online teaching, and the rest is kind of history. But yeah.
Did you grow up did you grow up speaking Spanish then at home, or?
I did. So I was born in Virginia, but my mom is Puerto Rican and my dad's Dominican.
Okay.
And so when I guess right as I was learning to speak, we moved back to Puerto Rico and I spoke Spanish and then we moved to Dominican Republic. So it's great because I feel like I got the best of all worlds. I got to live in Puerto Rico and experience the culture there, then in Dominican Republic, and then back in the States. And so as a Spanish teacher, that is so useful to be able to say and not just teach about the culture, but coming from an experience of having lived the culture, you know. So
Yeah.
I love it. It's been such a great thing. I never thought I'd be a Spanish teacher, and it's been such a wonderful thing in my life. I love it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, as someone who grew up monolingual and learned Spanish later in life properly, even though I studied Spanish at school, I didn't really learn how to speak Spanish well until I was an adult. I envy you. I think it's such a privilege to be able to grow up with more than one language. It's wonderful. And then to be able to use it for work is fantastic. It's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the other things is that because I had to learn English, when I came back to the United States, I understand what it feels like and how overwhelming
Yeah.
and intimidating it can be to adjust to a new culture, to be embarrassed of speaking a language. And so when I'm teaching my students, I'm teaching them from a place where I've been there, you're getting to learn it in a classroom setting where it's a lot, so you don't have to be embarrassed. I try to make it a very safe, a free environment because students are so terrified to be embarrassed in front of the peers. So we really talk about it's okay, this is a safe space.
Yeah, it's something about speaking a language that causes a lot of embarrassment, or there's a kind of very strong barrier, isn't there, to actually trying to speak a different language with a lot of people. They feel kind of like they don't feel uncomfortable. It's the same with, my thing about speaking Spanish is I end up not adopting a Spanish or Mexican or Uruguayan, depending on where I've lived, accent, because I feel very uncomfortable about adopting another accent. And subsequently, a lot of the people I've spoken to, even though my Spanish is pretty good, it's not perfect. It could definitely be better, but it's pretty good. A lot of the people when I speak Spanish, a lot of the people I think I don't speak Spanish very well because of my accent, because I don't adopt an accent, but I don't feel very comfortable adopting an accent of the culture where I am because it feels like I'm,
you
being
should go
false.
for it.
I don't know.
It's interesting that you say that because we have a lot of American teachers who their primary language is English, and they learn Spanish out of the love of the language, and now they're Spanish teachers. And that's something that I see in some of the groups I'm in, a struggle with feeling confident as a Spanish teacher, speaking a language and teaching students. And I think instead of feeling self-conscious, we should embrace that and let the students know, hey, I know what it feels like. I too feel that way. And it's okay. Let's do it together. So I think that we should embrace that. And it makes us more relatable as teachers when we do that.
Yeah, I think there's something there, isn't there? I think for me, it's something about related to identity. I don't think anyone who's speaking another language should necessarily have to put on the accent, if you like, so long as they're able to make themselves understood. If they're able to, there's a certain aspect of accent that you need to do whenever you're speaking a foreign language or another language. But it's also wrapped up with your identity, I think. I don't know. It's an interesting subject, but let's not get sidelined.
Yeah.
So you said you were intending to be a graphic and visual art teacher,
Right.
is that in the originally?
Well, I went to school. My college degree is in fine arts, and I majored in graphic design. But when I was finishing my degree, I decided that I wanted to go be a teacher. So I had to do something called the alternative certification program. So I had to go back to school, get certified. And here in Florida, they let you actually start teaching while you're working towards your certificate.
Right.
So I did that and just, became a Spanish teacher. And that's kind of how it happened. But yeah, and I just stay doing it.
Have you kept up your interest or your experience in graphic and visual art? Is it something you still do, or have you left it
I
behind?
No, I wasn't that good at it, to be honest. I was actually a photography major,
Okay.
and my counselor said, you should forget photography. You should market yourself as a graphic designer because it's more marketable. And I didn't know what I was doing back then. I was like, okay. I was like, sure, whatever you say. And I just did
Yeah.
what I was told and
Yeah.
ended up becoming a teacher. So
I find it fascinating whenever I talk to guests on the show that it always is really interesting to hear about people's particular journeys and how they ended up where they ended up, and so it's fantastic. So thanks for sharing that with me. So also your interest in technology, I'd love to, and how that intersects with language teaching. I'd love to hear about how you got so involved in that.
So I taught high school for 8 years. I taught Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, and then IB, we had to apply and create an IB curriculum, and we were accepted as an international baccalaureate school. And so then I began to teach IB. And so I felt like I had been doing this for 8 years. We did the IB thing, all of that. I felt like I had grown as much as I was going to grow where I was at, and I wanted a new challenge. So I went to go teach online, and I did that for 2 years. I missed the students in the classroom. And so while I was online, it was all virtual, whatever. So I became more techie, and I wanted to learn how to build a website. So I went and learned how to build a website, and I just kind of started playing around with technology. So when I came back to the classroom, I was determined to integrate technology in my new school. And, that's kind of where the passion came from. But the irony was, because I felt like, oh, I'm going to be such a much better teacher, which I ended up being. But I came to a school that has zero technology. I didn't even have a printer, not even one computer in a classroom, nothing. So, and it was a Title I school, Title I meaning, lower socioeconomic students and students who are struggling with basic reading comprehension in English, and those kind of things. So I hated that, we didn't have resources. I had no curriculum, no resources, nothing. So I was like, well, how do I bridge the gap? And so I started watching and playing around with technology, and I noticed that I could engage them, differentiate, save time, and then support my students. So I created a website for them with lots of resources and things like that. And that's how my love of technology came. And then I was like, oh my God, because that same school later on that following year, they overloaded me with kids. We were supposed to have like 30 kids max in the classroom. They gave me 50 kids per class.
Wow.
They gave me one class of 50, and then they saw, oh, she can handle it. So the following year, all of my classes were over 50,
Wow.
and the band teacher had 60. So I had it easy. So it was crazy. And so I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to provide differentiation and IEPs, grade all these assignments, communicate, So that's how I started discovering that I could leverage technology to save time and engage my students. And then I was like, oh my God, I got to tell people about this. So I started doing trainings in my school, my district. I created a whole training website for the language teachers in my district. And I was just trying to share to help people. And then I took it online on Facebook, and my community kind of blew up. And that's how it all started.
That's great. It's wonderful that you decided to share what you discovered with everybody else. I love that knowledge sharing. It's wonderful. So just to go back to your large classes, how did you find you said the student, you didn't have access to technology, but you ended up using technology to differentiate, etc., and help yourself. Was that technology that you brought into the classroom, was it?
Right. So this is what I did. My mentality was I kept asking for technology, so because we needed it, right? And I thought about it like this. I felt like nobody's going to give you anything just because you ask. You have to prove to them why you deserve it. So I said, I need to show them what I can do, and so I went and created I created a training website for my school. I created, for the district, and I did all these things to show them. I said, look, this is what I'm doing. And I have nothing. All I have is my computer and a projector. If you give me, resources, I can do more. And that's exactly what happened. The next year they gave me my own laptop card and that, but I had to first show and prove myself so that I could earn some of those things.
Right. So you were using your own laptop until they actually gave you one. What about projector? Did they have a projector? Did you bring your own projector into the classroom?
They gave me a projector and I had my teacher laptop, and that is all I had. So to use, I couldn't do Kahoots or anything like that because there was no technology, but I could do Plickers. Plickers are these paper Plickers. So I could do that, and my students loved it, and they would high five each other. And so little by little, I started, then they gave me 2 computers. So what I would do is I would rotate my students, and then finally they gave me my own laptop card, But
when you say laptop card, what does that mean? A card, so a classroom
with a
set of laptops. Okay, right. Sorry, I was hearing card. That was my mistake. Oh, wonderful. And so, what kind of things do you end up doing then, apart from the Plickers and Kahoot? I guess. What other things do you end up doing with your students that you think would be good for other language teachers to do?
So what kind of things? Well, what kind of things I did then, or what kind of things am I doing now with the kids? Because things have changed.
Up to you. You let me know what you think is effective.
Well, what I do now is I do a lot of I try to incorporate a lot of comprehension-based, CI, comprehensible input. So I like to try to have my students reading stories. I like to create stories with them. I have tons of resources that I created a Google create a story thing. And so I use different tools, like I'll have like one of those wheel spinners, and I'll put I use wheel spinners and this is the nice thing. People think that you have to have like a ton of technology. If you're like I was, which forever I had 0 technology, you can use very minimal technology. Like for instance, wheel of names or wheel decide. You can take and stick some subject pronouns and click the spinner and put your kids in teams and have them go to the board and make it a conjugation game. And so that's what I used to do a lot of, and I do. So I'll spin the wheel. It lands on a conjugation like yo, okay, I, and then the kids have to conjugate the verb that we're talking, like the verb ser, yo soy, tú eres, or it could be hablar or vivir, whatever verb happens to be. That's one way we use it. Another way I use the wheel spinners is I have them create a story. I created a set of story bundles in my academy, and it has like a plot, a setting, and the character. And then they spin the little spinners, and you can assign this to them, and they it'll give them a thing, and I have it in English, French, and Spanish. And then they have to write out a story in a Google presentation, and then I have a template where they can create what do you call it? Comic strips. And so that's another way. And again, you don't have to have a whole lot of technology. And it's so fun. The kids love making those things. They laugh. Oh, we laugh about the crazy stories they come up with, and they love being creative and sharing what the stories they created. So yeah, there's so many different ways to integrate technology to help your students build their vocabulary and language skills and have fun.
Fantastic. And it does sound definitely like you're a big fan of using games and making sure the students have fun when they're learning languages. Do you think that's like an essential quality of language learning and teaching?
Yes, I think language should be fun. I mean, learning should be fun. If I'm bored and I'm the teacher, how your students going to feel? Your energy is going to rub off on them. So if you're like excited about a lesson, or like, you're introducing culture, that's another thing. I introduce a lot of culture into my lessons. And I also make it about the students, And so they say I'm teaching about the family, right? I don't say, okay, today we're going to talk about the family and da 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 da. I start just in English. I'll ask them questions. Hey, tell me about your family member. Oh my God, do your brother and sister ever take your stuff? Oh my God, yes, I hate it when they take my stuff. Da 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 da. Well, who's your favorite uncle? Oh, my favorite uncle. And then we start talking, and we got a huge. Everybody's trying to share, and it looks like chaos, but I've got them. They're engaged, and I'm like, awesome. Now we're going to do that in Spanish. And then and now they are like, oh, I can't wait to say sister. And I don't like my sister. No me gusta mi hermana. So yeah. And they're into it now. So that's how I do it. And it works pretty well for me.
Oh, wonderful. So the trick is then to engage the students in their own language, or their first language, or English, for example, and then to move on to getting them to be able to speak in the other language. That's really clever.
And make it about them as much as possible. When we're creating stories in the classroom, they're involved. It's one of them in the classroom, or they're coming up with the story. The more they're a part of it, the better.
Yeah, so personalization is so important, isn't it? To be able to bring it back to the learners and what they need the language for.
Yes, and make it relevant. Like, a lot of times we talk about things that the kids don't like. Some of the textbooks, they talk about things that the kids don't care about. But you know what they care about? They care about Bad Bunny, and what the latest song, Despacito, what does it mean, So making it about stuff that they're actually interested about,
Wonderful. What age group do you teach, Rachel?
Right now I'm teaching, it's all of it. It's middle school and high school. So right. Yes, and my last school, it was middle school. So I taught high school for 8 years, then online high school, and then I spent the last, I will say 7 years teaching middle school, and the last year and a half, it's a mixture.
So do you see much difference between motivation of the students, if they're middle school students or high school students, when it comes to learning a language?
Do I see, yes, it depends on where they're at, because if you still make it about them, then, and if you do a good job at building community, then, then it will be easier. And so one of the ways I build community, and I have a workshop about how to build community in my academy, is, again, making it about them and having a lot of rewards, a lot of positive praise. If I'm having an issue with a student, maybe a student's out of their seat or whatever, rather than focusing on the kid who's out of their seat, I'm going to focus on the kid who's in their seat and working, and I'm going to make a excessive big deal out of that one the kids that are doing what they're supposed to. I'm going to be like, oh my God, you are such a rock star. You're in your seat, you're doing this, and oh my God, you already finished a lesson, and then they're like, me too, look at me, I did it too. And then the one that's out of their seat, guess what? They come back to their seat and they get on task. So where focus or energy goes, focus, I forget what the saying is, but what you focus on expands. So what are you focusing on in your classroom? It's so easy for us to focus on the kids who are off task.
Right.
And guess what? We get more of that. If we're focusing and rewarding the behavior that we want to see, that's what we tend to do. And so I do things like public praise. I do things like little river oak bucks. I used to, in my last school, they were called Lucas bucks. But they're like, dollars that I print, and they're fake dollars. And then, if they complete a lesson, if they participate, they get those things. And then they can go to the store and buy candy and things like that. I have little treats and stuff like that, chips, and everything has different, like chips are like $5, the big movie theater candies, they're like $10. So they have to purchase those, build up their money by participating, being on task, doing their work. That's how they earn money, and they get their work done, and they're also getting rewarded. And I also have these little coupons, little scratch off coupons that they can get 15 minutes on their phone. They can get a treat or whatever. Another thing is dress code. If they come in dress code and they're like, I'll give them like a coupon for being dressed appropriately. So those are all things. Mm-hmm.
But do you buy those? Do you provide those, or does the school provide the prizes,
I do,
etc.?
Yeah. I had the money. I had Allison Perryman from the cultural classroom. She made those for me because she's very good at designing stuff, and she made me a set of those. And then the coupons I made myself in Google. So I just, and then I bought these little scratch off stickers from Amazon, and I put them, and I got that idea from Meredith White, who got it from, I forget, somebody else. I wish I knew the lady's name so I could give her credit. So I just kind of saw it on Facebook one day, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take it and make it my own. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. No, I've done something similar. That's with middle school students, I guess. Don't they? It wouldn't work with high school students, or would
that
it?
Works with and to give you an idea, these strategies work with any age group and any population, because I taught high school and I did a lot of things. One of the rewards I used to do was class of the quarter and class of the month. I teach at a smaller school now. And so this is what I've been doing. It's been working well. And this school that I teach at, the students are students with drug and alcohol problems and behavior issues. So these are students that have been kicked out of the schools in our district. And so we are like their last chance before they go to jail. Some of them are on house arrest. Some of them have the ankle monitors. Some of them, their parole officers come to visit. They have case managers, parole officers. Some of them have gone to jail and come back and are, again, they're like, if they mess up again, they're going back to jail. So yeah, those are the students that I teach. These are not easy students to teach and motivate. It's very challenging. And when I came from my last school to here, I started using the same strategies because I was like, kids are kids, Yeah. And at first they were resistant. They laughed at me. They were like, please, your little fake money and your treats and your, and your little coupons. They were like, please, I'm too cool for that. Now, God forbid I forget to give them, when they complete a lesson or whatever, God forbid I forget to give them their River Oak buck or their coupon. They would be like, you forgot to give me where's my coupon? Where's my money? Can you go to the store? Can you go to the store today? And yes, we can go to the store. So yeah.
That's fascinating. And how did you kind of notice when the change happened in that attitude in the class? Was it because it was some of the students started being interested in it and that led to the others, or was it anything you did?
They saw the kids that were into it and that were, they saw how they were getting chips and cookies and whatever. And because I told them, I said, what do you want me to buy for the River Oak store? And they're like, we want these chips, we want these cookies, we want there's Krabby Patties is one of the things they asked for. I had never heard of a Krabby Patty, And so I was like, okay, so I go and get it, and it's in the little store, the treasure chest. And when they, as they earn their money, they can go buy. So, and they
wonderful.
started saying that some kids were always having, and they're like, I want in on that too, So, yeah.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. Yeah, with the middle school aged students, I used to do something similar when I was teaching and when I lived in Barcelona in Spain. I had Graham Euros. And
cool. Graham Euros.
And it was basically, I used to reward the students for speaking English and for other tasks similar to what you did. And then what I had happening was that we had a kind of generally an English only environment in the class. And if one of the students reported on another student for speaking Spanish, because it was an English class, of course, then I used to reward the student who reported their colleague, their classmate, with Graham Euros. And so we had an environment where we ended up with everybody only spoke English because they knew they'd be penalized, and their other students that they were with would tell on them. Basically, it's quite competitive. It works really well.
Not here. We're here in the States. The worst thing you can be is a snitch. It is like no bueno.
Well, I would have thought that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something I kind of thought through. I just sort of used to try and encourage the English only atmosphere in the class. And then at one point, one of the students, I think, said, he spoke Spanish. You should speak English, or, English only, whatever. And so I just pulled out 5 Graham Euros and said, thank you for that. And then that started it. Everyone was just snitching on everyone else.
And they'll be like, snitches get stitches.
Yeah, and similar to you, what I had was like once a month at the end of the class for like 5 to 10 minutes, I used to have an auction rather than a shop. So I used to bring things that we had lying around the staff room that were promotional stuff from publishers, or that had come they've given some free pencils or pencil sharpeners or cuddly toys or other stuff that the school didn't particularly want. And I used to just collect all of those things, and things I used to do quite a lot of conferences. So things I got at conferences were all freebies, and I just to hold them up, and they used to bid their money for these things at the end. So we had like it was like 5, 10, anyone. So me. We used to have a very fast-paced auction at the end of the month with everything. But I found it fascinating because some of the students just did not want to spend their money. Their objective was to save as many Graham Euros as possible. So it was like you saw the type of personalities there was. You could see that these students were going to go on and amass a fortune but never spend anything. Then others, as soon as they got money, they spent it. They would spend it. So there's like, you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. You're just going to spend everything you get. And then there are others that I used to sort of motivate them by showing what would be in the auction the week before. And some of them would save up their money because they really want a particular thing that was going to be in the auction. It's a fascinating environment, actually, because of that.
That's so cool that you say that, because I was always a saver ever since I was. And if I wanted something or whatever, I would save it. I'm going to save it for a special occasion or whatever. So yeah, I'm like, I know now as an adult, I'm a saver. So
Yeah.
it's like,
And
it's
then
crazy.
and then we had a couple of incidents where some of the students would steal the granules of the other students. I don't know if
Mhm.
you ever have that problem, particularly the students that you teach.
Well, it at my current school, which is it's miraculous. I can't say the word, but we're so small that I think because we're so family kind of oriented, and that's why. But our students have, I'm telling you, these kids have been in trouble in the law. We have several students that have
Mhm.
stolen multiple cars,
Wow.
and other things, breaking into people's houses or whatever. And yet at our school, nothing has been stolen, knock on wood.
Wonderful.
So yeah, you can none of our computers, none of our phones yet. And then I worked at the school that I told you about that I had 50 kids per class where it all started when I came back.
Mhm.
That school, yeah, that anything that wasn't bolted down got stolen.
Wow.
So it was crazy. So
Wow.
yes, I have had that issue, but thankfully not recently. The last couple schools I worked at, no issues, thank God.
But not even with your fake money. They don't try and steal that.
No, they do not. I don't know what it is, but it's like they'll give it to each other. They'll be
Right.
like, here, I'll buy you some candy but
Yeah.
no, we have not had issues with stealing, thank
So
goodness.
I guess it's a respect culture between the students. Then it sounds like it's like they respect
Yeah,
each other's private property between themselves.
yeah, thank goodness. I mean, we have created such a little family, and that's part of that community building that I talk about in my How to Build Community in Your Classroom
Hmm.
course. Um, it's just, I don't know. It just hasn't happened, thank goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I remember when I first started doing this, and I spoke at a conference about it, and some of the other teachers in the conference, the questions I got at the end, they were like, "That's a very behaviorist approach to the classroom,
Mhm.
rewarding and punishing students for the behavior." Now, it was an interesting question to ask because it was like, yeah, it is a little bit, but it's not the only thing I do. It's a level of I was doing it based on the presentation I was giving was that and other aspects of gamification, because I consider that gamification
Mhm.
really. And it was like, yeah, I think so long as you don't sort of make the reward the aim,
Mhm.
then if it wasn't that the money was the reason why they were doing it. The reason why they were doing it was the money was additional, and the auction items were additional. The real reason was always for them to speak English. I don't know. It's difficult to kind of promote, but what would you say if someone said what you were doing was very behaviorist, or are you okay with that?
Um, I don't believe so because they're learning and they're enjoying and they're doing the love of it. So, when I taught high school, my first couple years, I was having a lot of issues with engagement, and I would have a lot of resistance. And I would get comments like, "This is America. Why do we have to learn Spanish?" And I used to get mad. I used to want to like break out into a history lesson, and then I was like, okay, no, they don't know. It's my job to educate them and let them know. And I have to make it about them. I have to,
Mhm.
why should they learn Spanish? And saying things like, well, because it'll make you more marketable, or what. They don't care about that. They
Mhm.
care about, what is the lyrics to the Bad Bunny song saying? That's what they care about.
Yeah.
So I had to learn to shift my perspective and meet my students where they were at. And I went from students who were like, oh, why do we have to do this? To like kids literally running to my class because they couldn't wait to come to Spanish class, and they couldn't wait
Wonderful.
to do the lesson, and what are we going to do today?
Yeah.
And and then students all the time in every school I've taught at since, how do I get into your Spanish class? How do I, and I'm like, sorry, we're full. They got 50 plus kids. There is no more room,
Yeah. So that's the
yeah,
key, isn't it? The key is,
yeah.
if whatever you find that works for the particular students you have to motivate them to learn the language is kind of valid, I think. But it's interesting what you said about a lot of them not understanding why they might need Spanish, because I've only been to Florida once, but I was struck by the amount of Spanish that was spoken when I was there in lots of parts. So I would imagine the relevance of speaking Spanish in Florida should be quite clear, because there are lots of Spanish speakers there.
They don't care about that.
No?
And in my first 4 years, that's what I was doing. Well, you should learn why. And I even had a little video, why I learned Spanish. They don't care. They don't care that you might, get a better job. They might pay you more. They don't care about that. They care about the culture. They care about the food, the culture, the traditions, the music, that's what they're into. That's what they care about. So you meet them with those things, you engage them with those things, and you make it relevant to them,
and what about their roots? Do many of them, some of them have family that are Spanish speaking, for example?
Yeah, we do have, in high school, I had kids, and even now, that are native speakers, and, and that was, I would get a lot of times some of my English speaking students say, well, it's not fair that they're in Spanish class and they speak Spanish. And then I would have to okay, first of all, you're in English class. You go to English class, right? Same kind of concept, right? You're mastering your English language. They're mastering the Spanish language as well. So I would have to kind of get them to try to look at it a little bit different. The other issue is that they may have Spanish speaking parents, but maybe they were born here and they understand Spanish. They may even speak it, but not, they may struggle with it because, and then their reading and writing needs improvement. So, because they've been born and raised here. So those are other things to consider. And that's what I also try to explain to, my students. And then we talk about crazy things. We talk about that rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine and they're like, oh, he's a snitch, and whatever, and he's shooting with Anwen. I mean, so it's like, and I'm like, well, they know who Anuel is. Okay. So we talk about these things, and I don't know, I get them interested in kind of, I meet them where they're at and I hear what they're talking about. A lot of times teachers don't want students talking in the classroom, but I let them talk, because as I'm hearing them talk, I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, I'm hearing what they're into. I can engage them with that. Hey, let's talk about that, and and it makes the class, they're interested.
Yeah, it's very, very, very good strategy. So Rachel, I know you've spoken a little bit about it, but I'd like to explore it a bit further. Teacher education, teacher training, you're doing more and more of that, aren't you now? How is that something you really like doing? Do you prefer doing it face-to-face, online?
Oh, all of it. Most of it I do online, and I've been doing it since 2014. When I started creating the training workshops, websites and all that. And so, I love training teachers and helping. It's so satisfying to be able to make teachers' lives easier. We have so much on our plates as teachers. It's our jobs. My job as a teacher has only gotten harder. Every year they add something else. There's a ton, especially here in Florida, they're always throwing more paperwork, more training, more, you name it. They're like, here, more stuff, And yeah, and so how do I make my job as a teacher easier and other people's job by leveraging technology? So, for example, I used to spend hours putting makeup work packets together for students. And then I created a classroom website and everything's there. And the reason I recommend a classroom website versus, Google Classroom, putting the assignments in Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, Schoology, etc., there's no login with a website unless, and especially because I taught at lower socioeconomic schools, I found that the least barriers, the better, So if they have to log into Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams or whatever, that's a barrier, and the parent can't check, that's a barrier. But if you just go to this link, boop, and that's it, and you can see the makeup work for today, that's only one thing they have to do. So you have to kind of approach it that way, and it makes your job as a teacher easier. I went from spending hours putting makeup work packets together to, hey, sure, you need the makeup work? Great, there you go. Just go to this website. Hey, we're going to be out of town for 2 weeks. Can I get the work ahead? Absolutely. Here's the link to the classroom website, And so it makes your job as a teacher easier, communicating with parents and students, and you save so much time. That is one way to save time, with technology. The other thing, it's, planning, you can use tools like ChatGPT, you can have entire lessons created and differentiated lessons. We just did a wonderful training with Paulino Brenner inside of the World Language Teacher Tech Academy called ChatGPT for World Language Teachers. And there's so many prompts and things that you can talk about there. So I just, I love technology. I'm so grateful for it because it just makes our jobs as teachers easier.
That's really funny that you mentioned Paulino Brenner. I used to be connected to him online many years ago, but I haven't been in touch for a long time now. So
he's phenomenal.
I should get in touch with him and have him on as a guest.
Yes,
Definitely.
He is one of the most enjoyable working experiences that I've had. I collaborated with so many people over the years, all fantastic. But so far, Paulino has been my favorite. I mean, just wonderfully sweet, wonderfully professional. I mean, so many wonderful ideas and creative. I mean, yes, I love him.
Fantastic. So yeah, you mentioned briefly ChatGPT. I know that you've become more and more interested, as I have, in AI for education, for teaching, for language teaching. I'd love to explore a little bit more about that. What is it that you do exactly? You using ChatGPT for differentiation is one thing you mentioned, but how would you do that? How would you approach that?
So for instance, with ChatGPT, you can say, create a story. Let's say you want to incorporate comprehensible input and you want to do a story about, you've been studying the family vocabulary, right? And you want to do a story about the family, and you can say, create a story about a family and you can give it the vocabulary words you want. You can tell it the present tense, whatever. You can say, even the length, you could short story or whatever. And then you can say, and make it in Spanish and English, or make it in the, do 3 different versions, a shorter, longer, whatever. For beginning level, middle, and so forth, example. And it will go and create it for you. And then you can say, generate a list of questions from the story, comprehension questions. Now, I'm doing a workshop that's going to show teachers how to take those things, and it's a free workshop called Most Top AI Tech Tools for World English Teachers. In that, I'm going to be talking about how to use different tools to engage and create questions and entire courses, all by going create a story or create a lesson about this, and it goes boop, and it shoots it out for you. I'm going to be sharing some other tools that are even better, in my opinion, than ChatGPT. So yeah, and that is a free workshop, by the way.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And so there definitely seem to be two camps when it comes to generative AI, in particular, things like ChatGPT. Is that there's the camp that you and I think, are in, which is we think it's a wonderful opportunity that you can actually use AI as an assistant to produce things for you very quickly that will save you time and actually make the learners to differentiate, for example. I think it's a wonderful tool to be able to do that. Then there's the other camp where they think that they're looking on AI as either something that students would use to cheat, or they're worried about AI eventually taking their jobs. What would you say to teachers who feel that way about AI?
That is a wonderful question, and it's such a valid point you're making, because that I actually just did a presentation on Wednesday, and that's one of the things they were like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. This is amazing." And then one teacher's like, "But the students can cheat." And I was like, "Yes, they could. However, we have to shift our perspective. Education is changing, whether we like it or not. And so the thing is for us to embrace it, and instead of like resisting, how can we utilize these tools to support our learners? And I gave the example of when I was a high school teacher. My first couple of years, I had a lot of struggles with cheating, and I used to be like, "You cheated, that's it, you failed." And I would call the parent all upset, "They cheated and they're getting an F and blah, blah, blah." And then I shifted my perspective and I was like, why are they cheating? What's going on here? And so I started to talk to the students. What's going on? What happened? And then they would complain and they're like, "Well, I just didn't have time to study. I had to work last night and da 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 da. My baby sister, or some were in the football team. We stayed up till practice, and this were true. They weren't just telling me stories. This was, and so and then a lot of them had a lot of pressure from parents, and so I said, okay, let's see if we can shift this around. And so I changed my model and I made it where they could do test corrections. So if a student failed a test, they didn't just fail. They could do a test correction, and they would have to go and work through the questions themselves and find the correct answer, but they could improve their grade. And once I shift my model, my cheating incidents, I had none, because the pressure was no longer there. They knew that they could, try again and recover that grade if they needed to. And I think that's going to be the case with AI as well. I think we as teachers need to look at it from how can we, use this to support our learners, which I'm sharing about in my free workshop. And then we won't have the issues, of cheating per se, because we are also, how can AI support us as teachers? So we are going to be talking about that, and we are going to be, hopefully those of us are going to be embracing it, and that way we can help our students do the same, not fight it. Like I know Google Translate, there's a lot of people, "Oh, Google Translate," and then I think Diego Ojeda, that's the one who did an entire blog post about the case for Google Translate. And he talked about the benefits and how, Google Translate is not your foe. It can be your friend, So I think it's just a matter of perspective, and how do we use the tools, and how do we teach our students to use the tools in ways that it's not cheating, that it's maybe as an enhancement.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the other thing is definitely we need to change what we're assessing students on. So if the questions that we're asking them to respond to are questions they can easily use these tools to get answers for, then perhaps the questions we're asking them are wrong. So
Right.
that idea of making it localization, making it personal. ChatGPT can't speak about someone's personal life. If you're asking them to write something related to that, for example. So there's all that. I think the idea of perhaps we're not asking the right questions, or the test is the problem, not the tools. And
Yes.
I mean, the other thing is that these are tools now that people are using for real life. They're using, I'm sure you have the same situation as I have. I have people, friends that I know who are starting to be asked to use these in work, or they're using them for work, etc. I've got a friend who's a coder who now, he used to go and look for samples of code anyway on the internet. Now he uses ChatGPT to produce them and checks it. So for about 75% of his time, he's actually using ChatGPT to save him time. And then another friend who's a copywriter here in Mexico, who was a copywriter, sorry, she just changed her job. She was actually persuaded and encouraged by the company that she was working for to actually make use of these tools.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, they can save you as a teacher minimum 10 hours a week. I'm talking weekly, not just 10 hours per. I'm talking you can save, and I mean, just think about that for a minute. You can save minimum 10 hours a week using these tools, and I can't tell you how I'm so grateful because, and one of the things I talked about, because I'm also going to be covering in the free workshop how to create your own presentations and in minutes. And, I can't tell you how many times I was like, okay, I'm going to teach about this. I need a presentation. I need materials. I need a quiz. I need, all of these things. Oh, I don't have time to create it. Let me go on like Teachers Pay Teachers, And then I go on Teachers Pay Teachers and it's not what I needed. I'm like, oh, I could have made something better if I had the time, or it's a little bit of what I need, but I can't edit it because I have to respect the copyright, or whatever the rules are for the author who created it. But I can't edit it and make it my own. Or now there are tools that you can just say, hey, create a presentation on this, and it goes boop, and create me a quiz on this, boop, and it's just does it for you,
Yeah.
And yeah.
And as for this sort of worry that teachers have that these tools may well replace them, I don't particularly think that will happen, in the same way that all of the language learning apps, etc., websites for self-study, etc., hasn't replaced teachers. These are just things that supplement teachers, or give a very superficial knowledge of language learning to people who just need the basics, for example.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I completely agree. And I think we're a long way away from that. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think if anything, we're gonna evolve and I think we're like on the kind of like in a revolution, that we're on a technological revolution, that we are advancing so fast. And I think it's kind of like you have to kind of evolve or get left behind, and sharpen your skills.
I think if anything, those at risk may be subject teachers rather than the language teachers. So I think, language teachers, we need language to talk to other people. That's why we want and need language. But if it's accumulation of knowledge, if a school teacher is all about just teaching something that can be learned in another way. So it's just content that needs to be learned and reproduced, then that's a problem. Obviously, I think that needs to evolve and has evolved. I don't think that is exactly what subject teachers do, but it's kind of analysis, contextualization, and elaboration, and using those subjects to actually do practical things, etc. But I think, if anything, the skills involved in language learning requires something that I think is very difficult for an AI to reproduce.
Right. And there's something to be said for human connection that, I mean, I'm super techie, but when I call customer service for a company or whatever, I don't want to talk to a bot or a machine.
No.
I'm like, I want to talk to a person, and there's just something about that human connection that, oh, my card got stolen. And that's why I went through a situation where my card got stolen. I was shopping and I left it at the counter, but I was like, no, it got stolen. But anyway, so one of my while I was getting my card replaced, one of my things lapsed. So I had to call the company and explain to them, hey, here's what happened, here's my new card. And they were able to like not take away that little late fee or whatever. And, I don't know that that is something that an AI would have been able to empathize with and be like, you know what I mean? So at least not yet. So
yeah, I completely agree. I think, technology is a wonderful enabler, I think. So we're using technology now to speak to each other, as we wouldn't be able to do so without technology because we're in different parts of the world. That, I find, is the most important reason for using technology, not to replace a human being. That
exactly.
I don't think it's very interesting.
That's such a wonderful point that you make, because I have been so fortunate to be able to, over the years, collaborate with people from all over the world, like yourself. I've been here in Mexico right now. I'm in Florida. I've collaborated with Paulino, Martina Bex, multiple people throughout the years, and that are all over the place and all over the world. My community is full. We have over 16,000 members just in the group. And then the email community as well. And these are people from all over the world, the UK, Australia, China. I mean, it's crazy. And, I'm able to do that and make an impact in a lot of different classrooms, not just my own classroom, but globally. And I remember it hit me. I started doing this years ago, and it hit me, the global impact that, when I got an email from a college teacher, university teacher in France, thanking me for a training I had done. And I was like, what? And how much it had helped her college level students. And I was like, do you mean like college level kids in France are being benefited by the trainings I'm doing? I was like, oh my God, and I was like, I was so humbled and grateful to be able to do this, and like you and I are able to talk, and it's all because of technology. So I am such a fan of technology. I think that, we leverage it and we use it to make our lives better and easier.
Definitely. I think we're definitely in the of the same opinion when it comes to that. So, Rich, I'm going to wind things up now. So we've been speaking for quite a long time. I'm sure you've got lots of other things you need to do with your Saturday. And so all I'd like to say is just thank you very, very much for this. It's been fascinating to talk to you. Really glad you agreed to do it. It's been wonderful hearing about everything you're doing, and lots of great ideas. I'm sure the listeners will definitely benefit from this conversation. So thank you very much for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This was so much fun, and thanks for reaching out.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centered French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.